Hey now, Superfly is 187 coming at you today with permanently suspended the rise and fall and rise again of radio's most notorious shock jock. Today I look to get through the foreword by Jim Norton, little Jimmy Norton, and the prologue to the book itself. Let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Dedication to my mom Rosemary with eternal love. Foreword. This book is long overdue. It marks the first time we are able to get a complete picture of Anthony's life from his point of view, uninterrupted and without the self-imposed filter he spoke through for 20 years. Written accounts are, by nature, far less guarded than spoken ones. The author feels an obligation to give information, and then, when rereading it during the edit, feels obligated to give a little more. Anthony has talked about writing a book for years, and now he has finally done it. About time, motherfucker. I cannot wait to read it, and not just because I am typing, the foreword. For the rest of my life, there will never be another phone call that shocks me more than the one I received in the spring of 2005. The Opie and Anthony show was finally back on the air after a 26-month hiatus after being canceled on terrestrial radio in August 2002. We returned on XM satellite radio in October 2004 and were fighting an uphill battle to return to the glory the show had experienced a couple of years earlier in Afternoon Drive, and we knew it. While we were on WNEW, the majority of my time was spent with Opie. We became very close friends, and he is the one who encouraged me to come back on the air time after time. It was also Opie who pushed me to get hired and who pushed me to get raises. Anthony was friendly and always fun on the air, but I got the impression he saw me as Opie's friend, so we were never that close off the air. We liked each other, we just never hung out. While we were off the air for 2 years and I was thinking of throwing myself out my 22nd floor window on a daily basis, Opie traveled the country with me as I did gigs and kept me updated on everything that was happening with our possible future. About 6 months into our return, the dynamics between Opie and me began to change. He started fucking with me a bit on the air and being a passive-aggressive dick off the air and between breaks. Not all the time, but it got to the point where my mother called me and asked what Opie's problem was. She had listened to the show and said he didn't sound like he liked me. I also heard that from other people, including some fellow comics who came on the show. What I now believe was happening was that he was uncomfortable or threatened by the on-air comedic chemistry Anthony and I had developed. The bullshit eventually got to a breaking point, and I was ready to quit the show. 6 months in, and I was seriously thinking of walking away. I began to dread going in every day. Until that nondescript afternoon in the spring of 2005, I was at a Starbucks on 42nd Street with Bob Kelly and felt that familiar buzz in my front left pocket. I looked at my phone. It was Anthony. I honestly think it was the first time he had ever called me. It occurred to me that I might be getting fired and was really tempted to let it go to voicemail. Before the phone was against my ear, he was talking. "Look, man, I just wanted you to know that you're doing great on the show. I see what's been going on and that you're getting discouraged. Well, don't, because you're fucking hysterical, and I can see he's been treating you like shit. I've had to deal with his shit for over 12 years, and I fucking hate him." He proceeded to unload and tell me all about the issues they had over the years, in particularly the way Ope had treated his girlfriend, whom Anthony was still with. I was stunned. I thought Opie and Anthony were close friends, and this was after having been on the air with them for 2 years. I sat in the studio with them day in and day out and didn't realize they couldn't stand each other. What an unobservant asshole I had been. The relief I felt from that phone call is indescribable. I wasn't bombing on the show or close to getting fired. I wasn't crazy for feeling like something was wrong between Opie and me. I was doing well and contributing, and Ant was having fun with me on the air. From that moment forward, Anthony and I were so silently bonded. So while I only joined the radio show because of Opie, I only stayed because of Ant. Patrice O'Neill had said that Anthony could access funny faster than anyone he'd ever met, and while I'd never heard that term before, I knew exactly what he meant. Regardless of the discussion, the context, the topic, Ant has the ability to reach in with perfect timing and pull out something funny. He is by far the most talented radio performer I've ever known, and he's as fast as any comedian who has ever lived. I'm a great get if you need someone to describe an old lady falling down the steps or a Blumpkin joke, but Anthony can be captivatingly funny describing air conditioning duct installation. He can walk you through every aspect of the most monotonous activities, paint a perfectly clear picture, hilariously veer left and right, and will not once stray into the territory of boring. He has an incredible gift. For years, I sat next to him completely awed by this, because I have zero ability to do it. I'm good at firing out lines, but I suck at giving interesting accounts. I've often said that if I escaped one of the towers on 9/11, I'd still lose people halfway through the story. There is probably not another radio guy in history who has clicked better on air with comedians than Anthony. He is able to improv with all of us on any level and at any speed we choose. Guys like Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Bobby Kelly, Rich Voss, Colin Quinn, and of course Patrice would all tell you the same thing. When everyone was throwing insults around the room, you always knew that he would be more than likely to say something barbaric. But you also knew that nothing you would ever say to him would be off limits. Nothing. If you were trying to be funny, you could pick up a sledgehammer and smash his fucking teeth out, and he'd laugh. Anthony's complete lack of respect for the sanctity of any subject or institution is acceptable simply because he has a complete lack of respect for himself. That's not how I meant to say that. Let me rephrase. Anthony puts the act or attempt of being funny above the adultery of any subject, himself included. For Ant, when it comes to being funny, everything in life we have experienced or will ever experience is piled into a bin. There is no order to anything and no hierarchy. On the air, where his mind works faster than any other person I've ever known, he isn't carefully examining each experience and maturely weighing the appropriateness of making fun of it. He's leaning way over into the bin with his ass up in the air, recklessly pulling things out, slicing them in half, and throwing them back in. All things in that bin are truly created equal. Nothing is allowed to be removed, nothing can claim offense, and there is no immunity. Murder and breast cancer live side by side with aluminum siding, Dancing with the Stars, Crib Death, Rocky Dennis, and modern jazz. Most importantly, that bin also contains his own divorce, deep insecurities, and the death of his father. Absolutely nothing is off limits. He has no barriers on being funny, and he has never asked anyone to have them with him. But let's not delude ourselves. Hilarious jokes and thick skin aside, Anthony Cumia is a flawed human being. He is susceptible to fits of rage, drinks like Mickey Rourke and Barfly, and is currently in his 17th year of a midlife crisis. He's proven himself to be a terrible husband, a disgustingly loud neighbor, and an atrocious boyfriend. He is at times irrational and judgmental, and has the impulse control of a 12-year-old. When feeling melancholy, most of us look at old photographs. Anthony does karaoke, singing Lionel Richie songs while cuddling a machine gun. He has said things that were sexist, racist, something elsist, and 100 different things that were, fill in the blank, aphobic. And despite having one of the most brilliant minds I've ever encountered, he will still resort to calling people dickbags and fuckwads. He is most definitely flawed, but it's okay. A lot of comedic geniuses are. Robin Williams hanged himself. Lenny Bruce overdosed. Richard Pryor set himself on fire. Anthony Cumia gets drunk and goes on Twitter. Comedic brilliance is not automatically synonymous with good decision making. I can never overstate how incredibly lucky I was to work day in and day out for over 10 years with this impulsive, hilarious savant. The night he was fired, I sat in my living room and cried because I knew it was over. I knew that things would never be the same, and for the rest of my life, no one would ever be able to make me laugh so effortlessly on a daily basis. Ant is one of my closest friends to this day, and I see him as a brother. I've been blessed in my life to be associated with a tremendous number of truly funny people, and they've all made me laugh. But Anthony has made me laugh harder and more consistently than anyone else on earth. Even more importantly, He stopped me from making the biggest mistake of my life. When I was ready to walk away, Anthony picked up the phone on that nondescript afternoon in the spring of 2005 and pulled me back in. I'll never forget that moment, and I will always love him for it. Jim Norton, September 2017. Prologue. The city of Manhattan has a population of roughly 8.5 million. That's a shitload of people. It's a mesh of international relocating American residents and those who are actually born and bred right in the core of the Big Apple. Then you have the boroughs and, of course, the suburbanites like myself who consider themselves as much, if not more New York than the actual Manhattanites who get all the credit and props. I currently have a home on Long Island and an apartment in Manhattan, so fuck you. I'm a New Yorker, any way you cut it, and proud of it. My experience when driving into NYC is almost like being in a transcendental state. I have a unique perspective when I'm just about to get into the city and I'm looking at that amazing skyline from afar. It's always been a time for me to reflect, dream, and curse out every asshole who doesn't know how to fucking merge into the Midtown Tunnel. While working as an air conditioning/heating employee, I would often drive in from Long Island in my beat-up company van. I would listen to Howard Stern all the time, and his show was the epitome of the greatest job in the world. Doing radio in New York would be the best thing ever. I would imagine what it would be like to drive into the city to do that job. How cool it must be. On the job sites I would listen to him, and I wanted to be able to do that, but surely wasn't moving in the right direction. I was doing nothing that was going to get me there other than fantasizing about it. I vividly remember being fixated on that big stick coming off the top of the Empire State Building and knowing that's where everything was being broadcast out of. In the back of my mind, that's what I knew I was meant to do. It's always been easy for me to make people laugh. I had all the innate qualities of the quintessential shock jock and zero idea of how to make it happen. I didn't know how or if this was something that was obtainable or realistic. Back then I was making the trip to do a shit job that wasn't what I wanted to do. I just knew when I was making my way into Manhattan that I was destined for something bigger than driving that piece of shit work van and busting my balls doing manual labor. I'm not sure if I believe in divine intervention or providence. Did I will my own prophecy of becoming a successful radio broadcaster into being? I have no idea. I do believe in luck. And I can tell you this with 100% of all my being. I never in a million years would have believed when I was listening to Howard on my way into the city to do construction that one day I would have people making their way into the city listening to me. I never would have believed that I would be writing this book. I'm very grateful. Hope you enjoy my story, but if you don't, there's no fucking refund.